guys know who Hasan Piker is? He is the self-described socialist who went on the record and said he wouldn't mind being called a communist. He went on a propaganda tour in China recently where he praised the great leader Mao Zedong and how superior the PRC is. Although some Democrats have distanced themselves from Hasan Piker, he keeps getting recognized and embraced by the younger left-leaning Americans. And this week, he put himself back in that spotlight the worst way possible by showing up at the College Democrats convention, giving the keynote speech, dressed exactly like Mao in a Mao-style suit. He received quite some backlash, and quite frankly, it's really silly to show up in a democratic institution dressed up like a dictator. I don't know why people don't see the irony here. Before we get into today's episode, as always, remember to like and subscribe to this channel, otherwise you won't see me again. Let's get into it.
No more to the Democrats who compromise, who conciliate, and who betray us. No more to the fascist reactionaries, but no more to the Democrats who will collaborate and cooperate with the fascists.
Growing up, fascist or fascism is a word that I heard so often from my mom and all my, older family members who grew up during Cultural Revolution. It's just a common slur almost. And it's so surreal to watch an American that is a lot younger and use the same word so often and, dressed up like Mao himself.
Who will fund ICE, who will fund Israel, who won't need those Democrats anymore. In fact, we have a message. We are coming. We are on boss. We're on bot. We're unbound. And we will become undeniable. Thank you.
Just watching this happen in 2026, and there's a big sign there, it's just very surreal to me because during the Cultural Revolution, who were the first ones to follow the steps of Mao Zedong? It was students. It was younger people.
It's a great honor to be here in the heart of the American empire, in the belly of the beast, speaking to the future activists of the Democratic Party, but as an outsider currently pushing for an insurgency.
I don't know if you hear the same thing that I hear. I think this terrifies me. I think there has been a lot of talk about the extreme right. This person literally showed up at a College Democrats of America convention event dressed up as a dictator. I mean, this would be the equivalent, I guess, if someone showed up dressed like Hitler. I think people on the left would be furious. But somehow, one thing I notice is when you live in the West, you are more tolerant of extreme left. Because I think the messaging on the left is more, it sounds very accepting, it sounds very inclusive, and it kind of softens the blow a little bit, and it's more deceiving in that way.
They call me a lot of names. They say I'm an idealist, a radical, a terrorist. But the one thing that they don't call me is a liar.
I got stopped by a cop who thought I was making fun of Mao Zedong, which I never would and never will. Mao Zedong is a one of the great leaders of this world, okay? A man who changed the entire universe, the entire planet, okay? For real, yes. I mean, there was a lot of fucking excesses, let's be real, but the People's Republic of China would not exist without Mao Zedong.
I'm a little speechless right now. It's easier for him to say that, this is all just excesses, or this is part of the process, the price to pay for communism. By the way, he sounds exactly like a brainwashed Chinese propagandist, and frankly, at this point, I don't know what the difference is. It's easier for him to say that, but it's harder for people who actually lived it, or maybe their parents lived it, when they had to mourn a loss of a family member, when they had to inherit that trauma passed down to them. And it's not a small number This is where it really gets me. It's an understatement, to say the least. Historians estimate the Great Leap Forward's famine alone killed between 23 and 55 million people. This is one of the deadliest events in human history. It's worse than the First World War. That is not an excess. That's a policy-driven famine. And because the great leader refused to believe that this famine was happening, even though his own people were dying of starvation, the local officials were so terrified of the political terror around them, they didn't dare to report the real number, the real grain output numbers. And then there's the Cultural Revolution, a decade where the state actively organized citizens, including children, to turn on their parents, their teachers, their neighbors. Universities were shut down. An entire generation lost its education, and people were beaten, brutalized to death in public in these public struggle sessions. And for what? For owning the wrong book, for saying the wrong words, for simply sometimes being born into the wrong family. And this isn't distant history for us. This was less than 100 years ago. And yes, he's right. The PRC would have not existed if it wasn't for Mao. And I really wish he didn't exist. I think we could be all better off without all the famine, the loss of lives, and generational trauma.
Okay, Ethan, but like,
Go ahead.
Tibet was literally a fucking feudal slave mandate, autonomous zone.
China did them a favor.
In America, when I say something like this, people get very upset. We talk about the Dalai Lama saying, suck my tongue or whatever, but that's not far from the norm in normal Tibet existence before the Communist Party came in and
So China took over Tibet.
Like,
Well,
these are
their culture. They basically are trying to homogenize the culture,
if your culture
trying to spoil the religion and identity.
part
and they
of
did them
feudal
a
warlords
favor.
and slavery, abolishing that, yes, I do think that is good.
No, China did them a favor.
And I think this is a good way to describe Taiwan as well. The American federal government going into the fucking South and killing, unfortunately not all of them, but a decent amount of slavers and defenders of slavery. This is violent retribution from a powerful federal government.
Tibet is the South in the Civil War.
Yes.
I honestly can listen to more of this. The US Civil War is a war happened within an already sovereign nation state over an internal institution, slavery. But before the PRC invaded Tibet under the great leadership of Mao Zedong, it was a separate, self-governing polity that had their own army, that had their own government, and their own foreign relations. Now, does that sound familiar to you? Because there is a pattern that the PRC has been showing you since its foundation. And I do want to be fair to this argument. Before the PRC invaded Tibet, there was a hierarchical system. But the way he called it, calling it a slavery, this is contested. It's inaccurate, to say the least. And it's considered misleading by most scholars. There's not a lot of information you can find around Tibet. It's kind of a forgotten state. And this is what makes the narrative around Tibet so vulnerable to Chinese propaganda infiltration. The term feudal serfdom originated largely as Chinese state propaganda. It was popularized in English by a book that was published directly by the Chinese government. And multiple scholars have come out and said that the PRC has been misrepresenting their research in order to support its official narrative. Okay, let's put all the historical facts aside. Let's say that you want to believe that Tibet was in a really horrible place and it was just waiting for an invasion for the great liberation army to save them from all the atrocities. Let's say that happened. How is Tibet right now, I wonder? Freedom House 2026 report gives Tibet a political rights and civil liberties score of 0 out of 100. And this number is tied with South Sudan for second lowest of the 208 places examined. This number is lower than North Korea. Tibet has scored 0 for 3 straight years now. And previously, there was an 8 consecutive years of scoring just 1. Under the new Ethnic Unity and Progress law, children were taken away from their family. They were forced to assimilate to, Han culture. Foreign journalists, human rights organizations are rarely allowed to visit Tibet independently to verify the situation on the ground. Oftentimes, they're closely chaperoned by Chinese officials. Most of what happens there is deliberately kept from outside platforms. This is literally one of the least free places on earth. It is worse than North Korea. And that is not a contested historical framing, like the serfdom debate, like the feudalism debate. That's a fact. It's current. Most people in China don't really know anything about Tibet. All I was told as a Chinese student in Chinese schools was that the Liberation Army went to Tibet and liberated the place. It's funny, whenever they annex a nation, they call it liberation. How ironic is that? And my teacher was repeating the exact same phrasing that Hasan Piker is using here.
They were a feudal, oppressive, slavery-backed state, autonomous region.
Before you go, if you really like what I do here, consider joining my membership. That's all for this week. I'll see you next week.